back to another episode here on the From the Farmyard podcast. Today we're going to be talking about seed saving. And there's many reasons why you should be saving seeds if you don't already. Whether it be to save money or to customize your garden to your liking. It's a super cool experience and a knowledge that I think all gardeners should have under their belt. And I think it's great. And I just started learning how to do it this year. And so we're bringing it to the podcast to talk to you a little bit about that today. That's your part.
Yeah. As Reagan said, it is a very valuable resource to have, and it does save money in the long run because you're not going out and buying those seeds year after year, and they're already producing those seeds, so it's just taking that little bit of extra time and harvesting them and then saving them. Mm-hmm. Some seeds are a dry save, which just means that you can take them right out of the plant as long as it hasn't rained within the past few days or you haven't watered the tops of the plants, or however each plant is. You can just save those, put them right into jars or bags or whatever. Some things, and that you just don't, it just means they don't need to dry out. Some notable ones are beans, zinnias, marigolds. Sunflowers are hit or miss. It just depends on when you get them. If you harvest them sooner, you will have to dry them out, but it just depends with that. And a lot of other flowers are like that fall into that category of a dry save. I didn't really know the correct term for this, but I just did a damp save, which means they need to lay it out to dry fully before you can save them. Reagan will go into more detail on that in a minute. And some notable ones with that are cucumbers, gourds, tomatoes, melons, and corn.
So we're going to be covering a variety of topics today, from the, how to store them, how to remove them and save them and all that stuff. But first I want to talk about the biology of the seed. And I think this is super helpful because it really helps you understand the plant and how it produces the seed. And then it helps you find the seed better. I took botany in I think it was last year, 11th grade. And I took botany, and I will have to say it was super helpful just understanding the knowledge of a plant and how the plant works, how, pollination happens, how the plant reproduces. It's just a really interesting concept, and I highly recommend it, even just not for you don't have to do it just for school. I think botany in itself, just understanding the knowledge of a plant is great, and it's super helpful for gardeners and stuff like that. So I want to talk about the biology of a seed. No, the biology of the plant. I wrote that wrong. Let's talk about the biology of a plant, a flower, of the seed in general. So there's many different types of plants, and each plant houses different types of seed. And obviously, whichever plant will provide, it'll house them in different areas in a variety of ways. So each plant's different. It's not going to be the same. So let's give an example as flowers. Flowers, let's do zinnias. Zinnias house their seeds at the end of the petals. There's an easy thing for you. So if you find, I like to do a little test. If I just look at other flowers and I think, let's see if these flowers are the same concept as the zinnias. From knowing that a zinnia has them at the tip of the petal, I can then look at a different plant and just test it out. I may not be right, but it's worth a shot because I understand the biology and the science behind what it takes to produce a seed and where those seeds are. So there's an example of flowers hold their seeds at the base of the petals. But let's talk about garden produce. That's completely different. Garden produce, if you look at a flower on a squash plant, that's not where the seeds are going to be. The seeds are inside of the fruit. That's the same with apples. That's the same with other fruiting things. It's not in the flowers. It's in the fruit itself. It's in the produce. And there's different ways to save, which we're going to talk about that. So but if there's a specific thing that you want to learn about that you would like to save seeds from, I'm going to recommend this throughout the whole thing. Do your research on that plant. That way you can learn how to save from it, where the seeds are, and from there figure it out. But I think it's fun to just go out and just like look at the plants and then be like, can I find the seed on my own? And then from there be like, oh, so that's where the seed is. And it's really interesting. And I like the biology behind it and stuff like that. So just a neat thing right there. So next, I don't want this to be all me. I understand that. So you got to chip in too, wherever you want to chip in.
Okay. As Reagan said, that is a very good place to start. I think botany, whether you're working with seeds or whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's just a hobby like what we're doing, in means of making a profit later on, I think diving into your research and really studying what it is you're going to be doing. Because if you're going to be saving seeds long term, and I've used this example before, my great grandmother, she crossed all sorts of gourds and flowers and anything you could cross, she's crossed it, and or she had crossed it, and awards, things like that at fairs and things. And she grew, I mean, that time period was growing things for your family, the 1930s or 20s, 1930s, and probably into the 1940s, was growing things for your family in excess. I mean, you weren't going to be growing small little gourds if they're not going to feed your whole family. You're going to want the biggest things that you can get, store it, things like that. And that's what she did. And whenever you're doing things like that, like before you get chickens, you want to do your research on those, like which ones are going to lay the best or the best for each thing. You want to do that with gardening, and botany is a really good place to start with that.
Exactly. And I
for
think
the plant aspect.
No, it is. I think so. I think it's really fun to just go out and try to figure it out on your own. It is.
Agreed.
So let's talk about growing for seed. If you're interested in growing a specific plant for seed, you need to do some research on how to do this properly. But one of the main things is to provide proper spacing between your plants, as to avoid any cross-pollination. If two plants are too close to each other, the likelihood of them cross-pollinating is a high risk. So if you want it done correctly, without the unwanted pollination, provide proper spacing and do your research on the best way to pollinate these plants. So let's just say I would like to grow a plant specifically for the seed. I know that going into it, I'm going to grow this plant and I'm going to save the seeds from it so I can use them for next year, so I can sell them, give them to a friend, whatever that may be. I know ahead of time I'm going to be growing this and I'm going to be saving these seeds. So obviously bigger cooperations do this, like seed companies and stuff like that. They know how to do this. This is like their job. So like gardeners like us, we just plant stuff, look at the plant and be like, man, that did really well this year. Let's save the seeds from that. So like the likelihood of you doing this is not as likely as if you planted it originally and said, yeah, I'm saving these seeds, definitely. So when you plant it and you know this is kind of for you. So anyway, growing for seed, it's like proper spacing is key. So if two plants, let's just say I planted, and this is where us as backyard gardeners, this is where this kind of goes out the window for us. I planted a cucumber next to a different variety of cucumber. A bee comes along, gets the pollen from one cucumber plant and applies it to the other cucumber plant. Now we have a new variety that is growing, and it's not what we originally intended for. So, yes, go ahead.
With that, because I don't want people to get confused with that, the resulting, after they've been pollinated, the plant that is growing is still going to be true to the seed that you planted. The seed, if you were to save seeds at that point, that's when the different genetics come into play. It's not that portion. I just don't want people to get confused, and I know how easy it is
No.
for people to get confused. I was confused for a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. So,
Continue.
so from that, now you have a new squash. You save the seeds from that squash, cucumber. We're talking about cucumbers, my bad. Same thing.
You're good.
You take the seed from the cucumber, you go to plant it next year, and you have a cross pollination of something that you did not originally intend for. So, when people are growing to save the seeds, which we're going to talk about in a bit, they provide the proper spacing. They also keep their plants away from outside pollinators and they do the job themselves, which we're going to get into in a bit. But just to, if you're going to save a plant for her seed specifically, you know that provide proper spacing so the bees are not coming along and they're just messing up your whole idea of pollinating, and it messes up your whole genetic line and whatnot. But yeah. I have never specifically.
Some things that you had.
Go ahead. I don't know where that was going. Nope. Nope. Continue.
Some things that you had said. Spacing wise, sometimes the spacing's not. I think they recommend. I think it's like half a mile or more in between each plant to like each variety of the said plant that you want to save seeds from, and sometimes that's just not obtainable for backyard gardeners or really any gardeners, because then you're gonna have different gardens all over the place. But what people do a lot, and what I didn't really save any seeds this year from the tomatoes because I wanted to. I'm trying something else next year, which I'll get into later. But planting in rows, and still it's iffy with this even, but planting and doing like 5 plants here, 5 plants here, and then saving from the middle one. Now your odds are kind of the same all across as getting you could get across, but it's a little bit better if you just save from the middle one. In my opinion, I don't know if it makes any sense. It doesn't make any sense, or if it makes any sense, then it makes sense. But if not, whatever.
Yeah.
Another way to guarantee pollinating is, Reagan said, hand pollinating. And one thing with that, after you've hand pollinated, they make little mesh bags. I think they do them for like wedding gift bags or something like that. You can get the smallest one and you can actually tie those to the end of your flower or of the flower on the plant, and you can save from that isolated area. Is my voice good? Because I feel like it's all over the place.
No,
okay.
It's good.
Well, that's all. You had mentioned big corporations. Sometimes with the big corporations, they just grow one thing, so it's easier for them to save a bunch of things. Like it's one variety of this kind of corn or wheat or barley or whatever. So they're usually doing one thing, but it gets tricky with like backyard gardeners, as you said.
Right,
it's
and that's why I kind of said for growing for seed, this is kind of dedicated to the people. I know it's not really realistic for backyard gardeners because we really do just plant a bunch of things in a garden and whatever happens, happens. And if we like it, then we can save the seeds from it. So, like stuff like that next year, whenever I grow my zinnias, I may have a variety of different colors and combinations. I'm okay with that. I'm not against that. The one year, I chucked out I don't even remember. We have a compost pile. I don't know if I chucked out a zucchini or a pumpkin, but in the process of me throwing it out, the seeds have grown into a plant, and now we're getting like zucchinis that are like the size of pumpkins. It's like really weird, but it's like really cool.
That's cool.
So it's just like really random, but that's like the process of cross-pollination right there. It wasn't on purpose, but it just happened, and now we have this cool variety of plant in our backyard.
Yeah, and with cross-pollination, I don't want somebody to take that as a different way. It's really gourds cross-pollinating with gourds. It's tomatoes with tomato varieties and beans with bean varieties, things like that. Like you can't have a marigold crossed with a zinnia. It's like zinnia, like it's kind of like dogs and cats. To each their own. Like only dogs can have kids with dogs, things like that. Things like that. It's just I've said that a lot,
But
but
we get, yeah.
it's
No,
I don't
yeah,
want
yeah.
somebody to get the idea that you can cross like a pumpkin with a watermelon or something like that. But that would be kind of cool, but a little weird. Okay, continue. That was all over the place. Sorry.
No, it would be like a bean and a tomato. Like it has to be like the same plant.
Yeah.
It's like then you'll get a different variety. We got you. We got you. So you kind of led into a little bit about pollinating by hand, and that's my next topic I want to go into. And so let's talk about pollinating by hand real quick. So suppose you want a specific trait added to your already existing tomato plant. Okay. Your bush is prolific, it's perfect in size, it's everything you want, but you just want to add like a little bit more to it. Like, how can we make this better? So let's just say you want it to be disease or pest resistant. Let's just say you want it to be blight resistant. Blight is like a problem in tomatoes. I don't know how you do that. I don't know if it's possible. I'm just giving an example. So I'm not saying this you can do this, but we're going with it because I think it's a very good example. So the process of pollinating by hand is simply done by removing the pollen from one plant to another. So let's just say your one plant that is prolific, your one plant that is perfect in size, the one that you already have that you like the most, you are now adding from a different plant that is blight resistant onto that one. And then the fruit from that plant now will produce a new type of tomato that you can save the seeds from. And then the next year, you grow those seeds, and now you have, if it worked, you have your prolific, perfect in size, blight resistant tomato plant. Seriously, if what I just said is possible, please give it a try and let me know, because I seriously don't know if you can do that or not. I just gave it as an example. But so another thing which we talked about earlier is like keeping your plants spaced if you're doing this like on purpose. Again, this is really if you're really interested in saving seeds and like customizing your garden to your liking, this video is for you. But like another thing that they do is they'll keep their plants in an enclosed area to make sure no outside pollinators do the job for them. So if you want to get the best seeds, and what they'll do, gardeners will do this process by hand. They'll protect the plants. Like it's like a thing. Like if you want to do this,
Yeah.
Obviously, again, backyard gardeners, we're just gonna go out and harvest seeds and be like, man, that'd be cool if I grew a pumpkin zucchini next year. Like, yeah, that'd be sick. So, like, it's not always, but if you want it to be perfect, it's not always going to be perfect if you do it the way, like, just go out and harvest seeds. But if you want it to be, then follow those two, because those are great for that.
Yeah. I have three things. This, I also, yeah, three things. It's not, this isn't creating a GMO seed. We have gone over this in a future episode, or future episode, in a past video. We can have that linked wherever. This is not genetically modifying your plant. This is selective breeding, which is very different than changing the actual components of a seed. Genetics, what you were talking about with creating like a blight resistant, perfect size tomato that tastes wonderful for whatever you're going to use it for, that is 100% possible. It's just going to take a little bit of work if you're going to do it like that, because it's just like it's like you and your sibling. You guys are the same kind of, but not really. So it would just be saving a bunch of seeds, planting only that variety, maybe next year, and then picking the ones that either didn't get blight or were more true to the size that you wanted, and just continuing things like that. Um, Also with the spacing and the growing, um, for saving seeds in an enclosed area. Some people also do, and this really doesn't work if you live in an area where a lot of people are growing, like squash, zucchinis, things like that. The enclosed thing is very good for that purpose. But if you really only live in an area where you're the only one growing things, you can do a you can only grow that one variety. Like if you're succession planting, maybe you have one variety that you really want more than other ones. Grow that one first and wait a little bit before planting, like in succession planting, but wait a little bit longer so it can flower without the other ones flowering, and then you can save the seeds from that first one that's flowered, or
Hmm.
hand pollinate, whichever one that you prefer.
Hmm. So is that
I hope
everything
that
you
made
have?
sense.
Is that everything you have for that?
Yeah, that's everything that I had for that one. Yeah.
Okay.
I went off.
So let's move on to harvesting and cleaning your seeds. This is a very important step. Whether you are doing this like you're hand picking your seeds and customizing it specifically, or you're not, this is still very important to seed saving. So each plant is different. I stated that whenever we first started talking about this. Each plant is different, meaning the seeds. Wait, did I read this already? No, I didn't. I'm going to continue reading this because I wrote it. I don't know where I'm going with this. Okay. Harvesting and cleaning. Each plant is different, meaning the seeds will be in different places. We've touched on that. And the time of harvest is not always going to be the same. So obviously, some plants get harvested sooner than others. Some plants get harvested later than others because let's do marigolds as a let's do marigolds, okay? Marigolds do not flower the same time zinnias do. Meaning zinnias, no, marigolds like take forever.
Mine are, I planted some in April that are just now flowering.
Exactly.
And I'm like, it's stupid.
So an example for
And
seed
it's
saving
October,
with
mind you.
yeah, an
Sorry.
example for seed you're good, you're good. An example for seed saving with this is zinnias, they grow first, meaning they're going to die first. When that dies, we will then harvest the seeds from it. Marigolds, while zinnias are over here growing, these ain't going nowhere. So zinnias just keep going while this guy's just barely making it up there. So zinnias, we've already harvested a decent amount while he just finally blooms. Then zinnias die and marigolds, and then they start, and then it's just like so each plant is different. Okay.
Yeah.
So know that there's not going to be one set harvest time. Oh, okay, October 21st, I'm getting out there, I'm harvesting all my seeds. No, that's not, everything is different. So again,
You harvest when
do
things
your
come
research.
available.
Exactly. Things are going to die sooner than others, and each plant's different. So
Like
do
my
your
zinnias
research on
have
that.
been dead since the beginning of September. Like you said, they just die sooner. And I didn't really succession plant any of those. So I might have maybe one flower that's still holding on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna go out there and save seeds from it because it's lasted this long. It's a decent color. And also, before I forget this, when you're saving seeds with color, it can get tricky because you might save a pink zinnia, but if you're growing multiple different varieties of zinnia, you could have one that looks nothing like that. And it also depends on how people have crossed them before. You might get something that's not at all. You might grow only pink zinnias, but you might not save anything that's a pink zinnia. It could turn out completely different. So just know that some things are different and it'll work out.
Okay. So do you want to talk about because we're on the topic of cleaning, do you want to go over like obviously zinnias, you just pull them and you dry them, and a lot of like flowers and stuff is like that, but there's other things you need to clean. Do you want to quickly go over like cucumbers and tomatoes real quick and like cleaning process of that?
Tomatoes, it's tomatoes, cucumbers, and melons are the only ones that I can think of that you like actually need to clean thoroughly because of the I don't really know what to call it. I call it the mucus that's around them.
Yeah,
Um, but you
that's
get
what
like
I
a
would
little
call it.
string,
It's like
a
snot.
very it is a
It's
very
disgusting.
thin mesh strainer, and put all the seeds in that. Just run them under. I would do cold water. That's what I've always done. It's always worked for me. Under cold water, just getting everything off of them, running your hand through it, and once it's not slime anymore and they're just the seeds, put them out on a paper towel. Don't put them in direct sunlight. They need to dry in a cool, dark place. And you'll go into storing in a minute, but that is a good start for later on. But don't put them in the sun because that could cause them to germinate because they are now um, they've been watered in a sense. So all it takes is heat to activate them
Hmm.
to start germinating. Tomatoes, cucumbers, and melons are all the same. What I do is I lay them out on a paper towel. 12 hours later, I'll come back and I'll flip them and just let the other side dry out. And I've always had success with that, and I've saved quite a few seeds.
Yeah. So moving into storing seeds, this is kind of like a cross section, a good way to dive into it. But if your seeds are not dry when you go to store these, this is key. If your seeds are not dry, they have a risk of germinating or getting moldy, which then will ruin all the other seeds that you saved down the drain. All your hard work gone because they went to pot because they weren't done properly. So you want to make
Yeah.
sure they're dry because if you don't, that's going to cause them to just die after that.
And
So,
if you find that they're still like when you're saving them, sorry for cutting you off. If you find that they're drying, like I do 24 hours, the general rule, at least for a minimum, but you might have to leave them out depending on like temperature and everything else. You might have to leave them out longer to dry, and that's completely fine. Making
yep.
sure that they're 100% dry is the key. You can leave them out for a week if that's what you want to do before you store
Mm-hmm.
them, but general rule is at least 24 hours.
Right. Um, So when you do go to save your seeds, make sure they're dry and clean so you can store them till you plant them again the next year, the year after that. And I know I didn't write it down, but there's like talk about like, well, how long do seeds last and stuff like that, especially if you're seed saving. I don't know if you know that because I didn't write it down. I don't know if there's a specific, you know
When
what I'm saying?
saving seeds, any seeds are good. I mean, I think we've talked about that seeds are good longer
Like an
than like the
expiration date.
expiration
Yeah.
back. Yeah. I think general rule is 5 to 10 years, or 5 years to germinations. I mean, probably about 100%, depending on if the seeds were damaged in the process. Anything after 5 to 10 years, the germination rate goes down, not by a whole, not like 50% or something like that, but it just goes down a little bit each time. But you can still grow seeds. We've talked about this in the video before. You can grow seeds 100 years after they've been saved. It is going to take some time. They might not pop up right away. Be patient with it, but they can last for quite a while. So if you're worried about anything, or you want like a supply of seeds, like if you ever can't find something, but you want to continue buying year after year, but you know that these are pure to that variety, then you can save those seeds or and continue getting more if that's what you want to do. But having backups in case, like of a pure variety, I think is always really important going
Mm-hmm.
forward in anything.
Mm-hmm. Um, so also when you're storing, containers sometimes matter. You can get like actually like watertight sealed containers. I think that's good for all seeds because obviously if there's a chance that you get water inside your seed container, then they'll all germinate and then or grow moldy or whatnot. So maybe looking into a container that would work for you is something that you want to do, then go for it.
Yeah,
Um,
I always recommend like when storing either a Ziploc, either a Ziploc baggie or a jar. If like a mason jar if you have a bunch of seeds, or different size mason jars depending upon. Um, just to err on the side of caution, but also know with the mason jars, if you are going outside and it is significantly warmer outside than it is in your house, those are going to create condensation, which is moisture, which aids in the process of growing mold. So that is a downside, but doing um, Ziploc baggies or putting them on a paper towel after a jar or whatever, that'll work just fine. I don't like using the paper or the paper manila envelopes at all, because if those get wet, you lose everything. And I always keep seeds in multiple locations. Call me paranoid, but I keep them in multiple locations because you never know what's going to happen. And if something happened to this, not the first time I'm talking about a fire in a house, if something ever happened here, first thing I'm grabbing my seeds. Those things are being pulled up with me, and I'm out of here.
Right. That would be really sad.
That would be, my seeds are going to be okay.
So also along with storing in containers, temperature is also key. And if you're storing seeds in the first place, temperature, you should be careful with temperature as well. But as always, do your own research on everything that we've talked about in today's video. If we are your research, thank you for joining us. We hope that we could be helpful for you. But maybe there's a plant that you want to learn how to save seeds from, and you think, well, let's learn how to do that. Look it up. Look how to save the seeds, store the seeds, clean the seeds, harvest the seeds, whatever you need to know about those seeds. There's a ton of videos out on that. And after this one goes up, we are going to be having a more hands-on video on how to actually harvest seeds. So you learn the science behind harvesting seeds, the steps that it takes, and in next week's video, or whenever it comes up, later video, we'll cover how to actually save those seeds from a more hands-on tutorial. So be looking out for that.
Yes.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
We just hope that you guys learn a lot. And if you're saving seeds, or you have a variety that your family has worked on and passed down through a few generations or whatever, tag us in pictures on Instagram, and we'd love to know the story behind those seeds. Or leave it here on Instagram, but we love seeing pictures of gardens as well. But thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
We'll see y'all later.